Welcome to the Bandano Podcast, where we're calling a spade a spade. Great to be here with you guys today. What did I just watch? What happened? Where was all the transition offense from yesterday? Where was all the team ball from yesterday? Non-existent today. You know what happened? I'm just speculating here. Kara Lawson, preparing for today's game. She got tapped on the shoulder. Tap, tap, tap. She looked behind her, and there she was, staring at Kara Lawson.
What made this situation truly uncomfortable wasn't the fact that Caitlin Clark dominated. That part surprised no one. Everyone already knew she was capable of taking over games. The real shock came from how effortless it looked once someone finally stopped overcomplicating things. Because at this stage, the conversation is no longer about whether Caitlin Clark is a superstar. That debate quietly disappeared somewhere between a string of shattered records and a breathtaking 55-point statement that left absolutely no room for doubt.
This is very profound. Now, in the footage that I'm about to show you guys, you're going to see Caitlin Clark not talking to anyone. Head down like this. Everybody else going to be laughing and joking and playing. But she's going to be very serious. Now, I believe this footage was taken before the game, possibly after the game. But to me, it don't matter when it was taken. It's letting us know her attitude while in Puerto Rico, I should say. Now,
But the bigger question now is this. Who decided that Caitlin Clark needed to be held back in the first place? And why did it take a coach stepping away for basic basketball logic to suddenly return? Because the truth is, what happened next almost sounds too unbelievable to be real. It feels like something straight out of a movie script. But as strange as it may seem, this wasn't fiction. It actually happened.
Caitlin Clark is stuck on the outside looking in, and I feel like I have an idea why. Be honest with you guys, I believe there's some agenda going on. I believe Kara Lawson is back coaching Duke, the head coach of Team USA. She wasn't even there today. She wasn't even present, okay? I believe Nate Tibbetts was told, you do not start Caitlin Clark. Chelsea Gray is the starter no matter what.
As Team USA began its qualification campaign, Caitlin Clark stepped onto the international stage looking like someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. There was no slow adjustment period, no easing into the spotlight, no waiting around to find her rhythm the way analysts often predict when they're buying time. From the opening moments, Clark made it clear she wasn't there to adapt to history. She was there to rewrite it.
So Team USA just had an impressive win yesterday over Italy, in which Caitlin Clark came off the bench to give us 12 points, 5 assists, had a handful of turnovers. Overall, a good game. The entire game changed the minute she got in there, as every game does usually. Caitlin Clark has a problem. Number one, she's too good. She's running circles around people. She can drop 30, 40 on your head. She can give you 15, 18 assists if everybody catches and scores. She's a problem. She changes the entire pace of games. It's ridiculous. And then on top of being good, she's also global. She's iconic.
5 records in a single game. Not spread across an entire tournament. Not accumulated over months like milestones collected over time. Just one appearance, one stat sheet, and one unmistakable message to the basketball world. Caitlin Clark wasn't there simply to participate. She was there to change the landscape. And after a performance like that, most coaching staffs would come to one obvious conclusion. This is the engine now. This is the centerpiece. This is the player everything should be built around moving forward. But what happened next felt far less like strategy and far more like an attempt to keep everyone equally involved, even when one player had clearly separated herself from the rest. That's when Kara Lawson's approach raised eyebrows. Following Clark's historic breakout, rotations became unpredictable. Minutes fluctuated. And somehow, the player who had just rewritten international basketball history found herself spending long stretches away from the action, either playing off the ball or sitting on the bench altogether. On the surface, the philosophy sounded admirable. Everyone deserves touches. Everyone deserves rhythm. Everyone deserves their opportunity. And in most situations, that's a perfectly reasonable approach. But it becomes a much tougher argument when you're talking about a player who had just turned the game into her own personal showcase. It was almost like discovering a Formula One car and then choosing to drive it at neighborhood speed limits, simply because the other vehicles might feel uncomfortable being left behind.
And you know what Stephanie White said? Slow it down, coach. Slow it down. You see all the publicity Caitlin Clark's getting today? Did you see the news? Everybody's talking about Caitlin Clark. We can't have that. The transition offense, Caitlin Clark making passes that nobody in the league has ever seen before. We can't have that. Slow it down, Carol Lawson. Switch it up. We got to make everybody else shine. We don't want her. Everybody else needs to shine. Today's night, gonna be Paige's night and Angel's night. Yeah. What a brutal game, folks. What a brutal.
Then came the press conference moment that only added to the growing questions. A reporter asked a straightforward question about Caitlin Clark's role, but instead of giving a direct answer, Carl Lawson delivered a response filled with broad themes about teamwork, shared responsibility, and how every player on the roster is accustomed to being a star in their own right. Technically, none of that was wrong, but none of it actually addressed what people were asking. Because nobody doubted the talent on the roster. The real question was much simpler. Why was the most productive player on the floor being treated like a supporting piece in her own offense? And that's where things started to feel less like coincidence and more like a pattern. Especially considering that the same coaching circle also includes Stephanie White, Clark's coach with the Indiana Fever. And for those who have followed closely, the similarities have been hard to ignore. Slow the pace. Move Clark off the ball. Limit how often she controls the action. Take a generational playmaker and place more restrictions on her ability to dictate the game. Viewed individually, those decisions could easily be dismissed as stylistic preferences. But taken together, they begin to resemble something bigger, a shared philosophy. And fans noticed. Because basketball fans may disagree on almost everything, but they're remarkably good at recognizing when something doesn't feel right. What they kept seeing was a team that looked explosive, confident, and dynamic whenever Clark was running the offense. And a team that suddenly appeared far more hesitant and far less dangerous whenever she wasn't.
What's going on, my Fly family? It's your boy Izzy. Welcome if you're new. Hey, my neighbor was just grilling over there, and guess what he grilled? Hamburger and steak. Hey, it might be some beef in the air tonight, man. No, in all seriousness, man, some of y'all have been hitting me, asking me, Izzy, what is your take on this Caitlin and Angel situation, the USA basketball team? What's going on here? Can you give us some insight?
The numbers supported it. The eye test confirmed it. And the difference in pace was impossible to ignore. Everything seemed to change based on one simple question. Did Caitlin Clark have the ball in her hands? But then the story took a turn that even the most committed skeptics never saw coming. Right before a crucial matchup, Carl Lawson was suddenly gone. Not gradually phased out. Not officially celebrated and replaced. Just gone. No lengthy explanation. No dramatic press conference. No clear resolution. One day, Lawson was on the sideline carefully managing rotations and offering carefully worded answers. The next day, she wasn't there at all. And into that unexpected opening stepped Nate Tibbetts. Unlike many coaches, Tibbetts didn't arrive with a grand philosophy or an elaborate speech about balance and equality. Instead, he did something that, in this situation, felt almost revolutionary. He looked at the roster and simply started the best player. That was it. No controversy. No endless discussions. No emotional debates over fairness. Just a straightforward basketball decision. Clark started, and suddenly everything that had seemed complicated became remarkably simple again. The offense flowed. The ball movement improved. Players who had looked slightly out of sync suddenly appeared comfortable and confident again. The pace increased, the spacing became cleaner, and the entire system started functioning like a team built to maximize its strengths. The lineup featuring Kelsey Plum, Paige Buchers, Angel Reese, Ryan Howard, and Clark clicked almost immediately. And what followed wasn't merely a victory. It was a statement hidden inside the final score. A 55-point domination, 101-46. And just like that, All the complicated theories, endless debates, and questionable decisions were replaced by something much harder to argue with: results.
So people think Caitlin Clark is getting iced out on Team USA, but she's still leading the team in points and assists. I've seen the clips everyone's posting. Moments where it looks like Caitlin Clark is wide open and not getting the ball. Or another player is pushing the ball up the court instead of letting her initiate the offense. But here's the part people are missing. This roster is loaded. You got elite guards like Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, and Paige Beckers. You also have players with completely different styles like Angel Reese, who naturally push the pace when they grab rebounds. So when you have a roster this loaded with talent, there's gonna be an adjustment period.
The kind of result that doesn't just end a game, it ends arguments. Because once a different approach produces a complete demolition, the conversation stops being theoretical. Suddenly, it's much harder to say, maybe the old system could have worked, when the new one just delivered a performance that looked like a seasoned team facing a group that had met each other moments before tip-off. But the moment that really made people sit up came after the game. Because Nate Tibbetts didn't do what coaches usually do. He didn't deflect. He didn't hide behind vague talking points. And he didn't shield the previous system with carefully crafted ambiguity. Instead, he admitted in simple terms that the constant lineup changes hadn't worked. The team needed consistency. And the group built around Clark and the other core pieces simply made sense. In coaching language, that's about as close as you'll ever get to hearing someone say, "Yeah, we made this more complicated than it needed to be." And just like that, the entire conversation changed. What had once been presented as a philosophical debate suddenly looked like a very avoidable mistake. What had been described as team balance began to feel more like limiting your most impactful player for reasons that nobody could clearly explain. And now, the ripple effects are impossible to ignore, because this goes far beyond one international tournament. It raises bigger questions about what happens next, especially in the WNBA, where Stephanie White still leads the Indiana Fever. And now there is a very public comparison sitting right in front of everyone. On one side is a system that slows Clark down, spreads out her responsibilities, and prioritizes balance. On the other is a system built around a much simpler idea. Give her the ball, let her read the floor, and see what happens. One approach has produced long stretches of uncertainty and disjointed possessions. The other has produced record-setting performances and victories so overwhelming that they speak for themselves. And that's why the debate surrounding Caitlin Clark no longer feels like a matter of opinion, because eventually, results become impossible to argue with.
All right, Nate Tibbetts took the podium today to address things about the game. Caitlin Clark not starting. I believe there's some agenda behind this. Let's make this very clear. Chelsea Gray has started all 3 games. We have seen Angel Reese start games, Paige Becker start, Kelsey Plum started, Jackie Young started. We've seen everybody start. I think Stephanie White started one of the games. It's been absolutely ridiculous. We watched Kiki Iriafin get a start. It's only a couple games left. They said that they was rotating everybody into starting lineup and doing this and doing that.
And the uncomfortable part is that everyone has now seen both versions unfold in real time. That alone turns what comes next in the WNBA season into something that feels less like a continuation and more like a live experiment. Because fans are no longer just hoping for improvement. They're expecting clarity. A decision has to be made. Do you fully lean into what clearly produces results, or do you double down on a philosophy that has already been stress-tested on an international stage? And then there's the bigger question lingering over everything. What happens with Team USA moving forward? Does Carl Lawson return and try to reestablish the previous system, hoping the outcome changes with repetition? Or does Nate Tibbetts get the opportunity to build on what happened after making one simple adjustment that immediately unlocked a higher level of performance? Because at this point, it stops being just a coaching decision. It becomes a philosophical one. It's about whether a team is built around its most impactful player, or whether responsibility is distributed in a way that sounds balanced in theory, but becomes inefficient in practice. And after everything that has unfolded, the record-breaking performances, the rotation changes, the unexpected absence, the blowout result, and the contrast between 2 approaches, it becomes harder to pretend the question is complicated. Because the simplest version of the story is also the most revealing. The moment the restrictions faded and Caitlin Clark was allowed to operate freely, everything started to look different.
Question of the game.
I thought it was good. I thought we started off a little slow. I thought our second unit came in and was really good. And then I thought overall in the second half we were pretty good.
Returning back since July, how's your body feeling? You got a lot of rhythm.
Feel good. Obviously, 5 games in 7 days is a true test and see where my body's at. But so far, I feel really good.
Playing at a national level, adult first time. How has it been so far with the fans here in Puerto Rico?
It's been great. I thought our game, especially versus Puerto Rico at 8 p.m., was a really fun one for us. The fans have been great. Fans that have come from America have been awesome. So anytime you get to put this jersey on, I think it's a really fun thing. You take a lot of pride in it. And it's really
Now the entire basketball world is left staring at one very uncomfortable realization. If it was always this easy, then what exactly were they doing before? And that is where things stop being a basketball story and start feeling like a quiet power struggle nobody wanted to admit was happening. Because once the results are that obvious, the conversation shifts from what works to who decided otherwise. And suddenly, every earlier decision starts looking a little different under a brighter light. Those stretches where Caitlin Clark was standing off ball like a very...
Now the entire basketball world is left staring at one uncomfortable realization. If it really was this simple all along, then what exactly were they doing before? And that's where this stops feeling like just a basketball discussion and starts resembling something closer to a quiet power struggle that nobody wanted to openly acknowledge. Because when the results are that clear, the conversation naturally shifts. It's no longer just about what works. It becomes about who decided it shouldn't. And suddenly, earlier decisions start to look very different under a sharper light. Those stretches where Caitlin Clark was stationed off the ball like an overqualified spectator don't feel like harmless experimentation anymore. In hindsight, they look deliberate. Those possessions where the offense slowed into something that seemed to lose its direction don't feel like normal growing pains. They look like the predictable outcome of removing the one player who naturally sets the pace. And this is where the situation becomes even more uncomfortable. Because Clark never made it a public issue. No dramatic interviews. No cryptic posts. No visible frustration designed for headlines. She did the one thing that makes any narrative harder to control. She stayed consistent and kept producing, which meant the contrast became unavoidable. When she was fully engaged in the offense, everything looked sharp, fast, and structured, like a system operating at full capacity. When she wasn't, it looked like a group of talented players rotating responsibility without a clear conductor. And that difference is what everyone noticed, whether they wanted to or not.
You got a lot of rhythm.
feel good. Obviously, 5 games in 7 days is a true test and see where my body's at. But so far, I feel really good.
Playing at a national level, adult first time. How has it been so far with the fans here in Puerto Rico?
It's been great. I thought our game, especially versus Puerto Rico at 8 p.m., was a really fun one for us. The fans have been great. Fans that have come from America have been awesome. So anytime you get to put this jersey on, I think it's a really fun thing. You take a lot of pride in it.
That silence from Clark ended up being louder than any criticism ever could have been because it forced everyone else to explain the unexplainable. And now that Nate Tibbetts has unintentionally turned this into a case study, the ripple effects are only getting started. WNBA front offices are watching. Analysts are rewatching films. Like they're studying a plot twist they